Going live, so hopefully we're live.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to June. Wow. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let's establish that we have a quorum, beginning with a roll call vote. Joe?
Here.
John?
Here.
Meredith? Here. Christopher?
Here.
Juan Carlos?
Here.
I am here as well. We do have a quorum. Juan Carlos, I get to come right back to you again.
Yeah.
Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes.
Thank you. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity framework and the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of your agenda. Juan Carlos, back to you again. Could you please be our reader this evening?
Stop choking on my water.
Thank you.
In the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirm their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to constructing these systems of integrity. I'll follow that up with the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement. There are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you're on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thank you. And with the beginning of June, I'd like to just elevate and honor the fact that we've begun Pride Month for the month of June. Christopher, I know you've already been celebrating and honoring the day today. If you want to add any voice to the celebrations.
Yeah, I think, folks have heard me speak and we're a queer family and I'm really, speaking of being Pride Month, we're very proud to be members of this community and couldn't have landed in a better location. I know one of our peers coming to Wisconsin from a very urban space was, would we be accepted and feel included, and we completely have. And so that is a testament to this community and this school district. And I just want to show that appreciation and recognize all the leadership, and that we are definitely a diverse global society within our own right, and the unique identities that they'll bring, I believe, strengthen us as a community. So I just want to share that. And also acknowledge that June 19th is also a Juneteenth, so make sure that we're recognizing that as an important holiday as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Board members, just drawing your attention to the rest of the agenda for this evening. There will be just a little bit of a shift under board action. The AGR reports are actually typically in consent. We've just asked to have them elevated as a board, so we actually won't be taking a vote because that isn't a necessary step. But other than that, any adjustments, feel free to share those. Otherwise, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Christopher. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the agenda has been approved. So moving on to student recognition. I believe we have an organization with us this evening, Raise Your Voice. Super excited to hear from all of you. If you want to come forward, I think that's an option up to the table up front. Yeah.
So thank you, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As we bring our first student recognition and Raise Your Voice VHS Club in this space, I want to take an opportunity to do introductions to our full board here in attendance, to the person who will be our incoming Director of Special Education, who joined us here from the Twin City area, and welcome Aaron Davenport to the Verona Area School District family. So welcome to our board meeting today.
Welcome.
All right, and we're happy to open up, and we love hearing from our students. And first and foremost, and these are exciting moments that are hard to follow often in our board meeting. So we're going to turn it over to Dr. Hawkins to do formal introductions to begin our process.
Well, good evening. So tonight I'm proud to introduce this club, Raise Your Voice. It is led by Teresa Nicholas. And just by way of conversation and how she was so proud of the work and advocacy that they have done. And so it kind of came on the heels. Dr. Clarity and Chad had spent some time at the State House, and I was talking to her about it, and she said, well, we can do one better. Our students have also done some advocacy. And so this club is in direct alignment to our strategic framework priorities of student agency, wellness and mental health. And their goal is to raise awareness about mental health at the high school. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and they can talk to you about all the wonderful things that they're doing at the high school and beyond.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, so I'm Teresa Nicholas. I'm a school social worker here at the high school and a very proud advisor of the Raise Your Voice Club. And I'll let my two co-presidents introduce themselves. Is that all right?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. I'm Micah Bartles. I'm a senior at Verona High School and have been a part of Raising Voice for all 4 years, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll be going into elementary education at UW-Madison next year.
Yes, and hi, I'm Ruby Bellin. I am also co-president and have been here for 4 years. And I'll be going to Minnesota Twin Cities for nursing next year.
Awesome.
So Raise Your Voice was created by NAMI Wisconsin. NAMI is National Alliance for Mental Illness. And NAMI actually was created here in Madison, Wisconsin. It's a nationwide organization, but it was birthed here in Madison like 50 years ago. And they created these Raise Your Voice clubs to come into high schools and middle schools to help elevate the importance of student voice and create opportunities for advocacy and education regarding the importance of mental health.
Oh, we just.
You met our team. We thought that was kind of fun, so we wanted to have that in there. So we're going to talk a little bit about some highlights of this year.
Perfect. We'll start with the NAMI walk. So in this past fall, us as a club, we took a few members downtown, and we raised awareness and to help like reduce the stigma of mental illness. We did participate in the NAMI walk, and we didn't raise a huge amount of money. Our impact went a lot further, and we were able to build community within our club, and like it was really cool to see how everyone else came together for this amazing walk and to raise awareness. We learned that taking small steps, literally and figuratively, can lead to a lasting and like meaningful impact.
Another project that we addressed or worked on this year was resetting our reset rooms. When this building was built, there were some spaces that were identified as reset rooms, and these were private spaces for students to use if they were feeling a little emotionally dysregulated and needed some privacy so that they would go to a bathroom to cry. And while we're really grateful that these spaces were created, they were kind of cold and clinical and just not very welcoming. So we decided to have a design challenge in our room to redesign them, and thanks to the support of Mr. Cox, who emotionally and financially supported this endeavor. We did a couple of redos. So we changed the name from Reset to Recharge Room. We decided that was maybe a little more positive, and we wanted to incorporate a nature theme. And so there's the Mountain Recharge Room and the Forest Recharge Room. And so these are spaces that our students can access when they just need some privacy. And they can check in before, during, or after with any of us on student services. And the response to the rooms has been really positive. Students feel real grateful that they have a prettier, calming space. We put in little twinkle lights, and there's some soft-scape sounds that they can turn on, and just made the rooms feel a lot more welcoming and happy. Oh, some more pictures. We spent about a week in the end of February painting at night, and we were fueled by a lot of Girl Scout cookies.
Yes, so that was a really great community event for our club. Another amazing opportunity was the Day of Advocacy with NAMI on the square. So we actually got to go to the Capitol with a bunch of other Raise Your Voice clubs from around Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to speak with state representatives. We started the morning off by like building kind of our learn how to do a pitch kind of, and kind of how to like tell your story in an impactful way to state leaders, which was very cool, and sort of helped us all like get a voice and feel like we were doing something powerful and do something that.
Yeah, it was really impactful for me, and I think for the students as well, to see democracy in action.
Yes.
You know, we learned a lot about the importance of meeting with people and letting them know what we're doing and what's important to us, which we're doing right now with you as well. So let's continue.
Yeah, and we advocated for more school-based funding for school-based mental health.
Yep.
So that was really impactful.
Yeah. Yes, I think, so that's kind of a little summary of what we do here in our club, and yes.
And like in summary, Raise Your Voice Club has helped students to better understand mental health and the resources that are available and continue to become available as our club expands and stuff. And we've also been having like real conversations within our club, building community with our members, doing outside events, having speakers come in. And yeah, we've learned how to talk about our mental health and how we're feeling in a way that we know that we're not going to be judged within our club and we're heard in our club. And also in Raise Our Voice, we've learned to expand like where we can get help, whether that be our like resources here at school or the hotline, national hotline. And we know that this can make a big difference for students who are struggling.
And so then you also wanted to tell the board, thank the board for making these kinds of.
Yeah, like Club Impossible. These clubs have really impacted my high school career, and I'm really grateful that these are an opportunity for me to grow as a leader and as someone just like learning to have more of a voice in mental health and just like advocating for things. So thank you.
Yes, we are grateful that the Verona area school district really does prioritize the importance of student mental health. And so thank you for anything that you can do to highlight and uplift that. We really appreciate it.
Dr. Hawkins, I appreciate the gratitude coming this way, but I would like to first share it back at you. So my husband calls this like a thank you circle. Thank you. No, thank you. But really, as you talked about, we talked about this at the board table, but it only has meaning, right, if you experience it as students. So I just have a couple of curious questions about like how this continues to be a part of the greater school experience. I'm first curious with the recharge rooms, what kind of utilization are you seeing from students with those spaces?
Regular, daily. I mean, they're embedded in our two spaces within student services. So
Okay.
student services, counselors, psychologists, and social workers are in two different spaces. So there's one in my space and one in the other space. So I regularly, daily, is what I can say.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, right.
Well, and I will say that what I've kind of learned on that day of advocacy, there was just a lot of natural conversation that happened with the club that opened my eyes to how we as a student services group can do a better job at explaining how we can support students more and differently. And so we have some plans to advertise it a little bit more for students so that more students know that they're available.
That was kind of my next question.
Yeah.
Within beyond the scope of the club, which sounds like such a rich space to kind of get some of this organic energy started and supporting one another, what you kind of see as visions forward about, ways to grow, involve more students, create more awareness. And, if you don't have an answer now, that's certainly okay too, but that sounds really exciting to think about ways that this can expand.
Okay, yes, we've done a couple of like outreach meetings where it's like invite your friends in to come join because we like want it to be a space where like everyone feels like they can join. I think also next year we maybe have plans to, or not name it.
Well, we've done a bake sale.
Yes.
And we want to have another bake sale there, maybe even
And
two.
yeah, and we've done like club collaborations with like Best Buddies.
That's right.
And Letters of Love, which is.
That's right.
Yeah, so yeah.
We have next year, our plan is to have a different theme each month to kind of focus on. So each year, we're just getting a little bit better.
Yeah. And thanks, Mr. Cox, for supporting this
Yeah,
too, so it
yeah,
can continue to spread kind of as school-wide, which is really amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to dominate the conversation.
Other board captured it, the thanks should be
Mhm.
centered for it that way. We're taking the initiative and the work to have these conversations and to destigmatize and support and uplift, and that also spreads upward to your old folks here who maybe can grow up with that type of, easy discussion, and those types of things, make a huge difference. And I'm just really, I hope that you are heading off to college knowing that you have made an impact on the Verona area school district community that will last beyond your time here, and that's a huge thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to talk about the TPI with you?
Oh, sure, please.
So I realize, maybe I should brag more about some of the stuff that we do. So last year, through a connection that I had at DPI, I was contacted by folks there to see if I knew of any students that would be available to be in a promotional video that they put out. And so I did, and along with Olivia Birch at the middle school. So she offered 3 students from the middle school. I offered 2 of my Raise Your Voice members, not these 2, although you 2 would have been great too. And DPI came with a professional videographer and makeup artist and the whole nine. And they had a whole day of filming in our library, such a beautiful setting. And so they created what they were doing. DPI overdid their website and wanted to talk about the importance of school-based mental health. And so they got it from superintendents and school boards and staff and parents. They realized that they needed student voice. So that's why they contacted us to see if we had any students to offer. So our students were interviewed on camera and spoke really eloquently about the need for school-based mental health services. And they were speaking, and then there's that B footage of us talking. Anyway, it's now on the DPI webpage, and the students are identified as being Verona area high school students. And you'll recognize, if you watch it, you'll recognize our beautiful building. There's some shots that are from a different building, I think in Sun Prairie. So if you know this building, you're like, those aren't quite our colors, so you might recognize it, but they try to make it seem like it was all the same building, the trick of videography, I guess. But you should know that our space here is being used by DPI to talk about the importance of school-based mental health.
And that just speaks to the work that is happening and how we are being known for our advocacy and just our forward thinking and promoting wellness and mental health amongst our students. And our students are seeing, and our family and our communities are recognizing the difference. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all. Continue to share ideas this direction in ways that we can continue to support you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do I just leave this?
So next on our agenda, just a standalone announcement and update. So after all of our prior conversations and input from the community, we are proud to announce that we do have a school resource officer that has been hired. So Dr. Clarity, perhaps Chad, anyone that wants to share a little bit on who will be joining our team?
Thank you. We're very proud. And first I want to say congratulations to our seniors before they walk out the door. Don't hear me say that. And
See
we'll
you next,
see you at
Sunday.
graduation on Sunday. All right. Again, as President Murphy stated, we're excited to recognize Officer Bradley Stoll, who was selected out of 3 finalist candidates that were all interviewed in conjunction in partnership with the Verona Police Department and the administrative team here at Verona Area High School. It was a very thorough collaboration in that for the last 2 months of the year, the 3 candidates all were able to spend direct time here in the building, working with families, working with students, to be able to kind of showcase their relationship skills, and then did a thorough interview in conjunction with the 2 departments. Ultimately, the Verona Police Department is the final hiring authority, yet gave the district a key voice in making the final selection or selection for that spouse. And of the 3 very qualified candidates, Officer Stoll rose to the top, and we're proud to begin that contract work with him in the fall of next year.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for all the time, input, and just want to thank too the city, Verona Police Department, just all the collaboration has been really powerful to get us to this point. So yeah. And we'll continue on into our superintendent's report. Welcome to a number of other esteemed guests tonight.
All right. For our superintendent's report, we'd like to open up and we'll be led by Deputy Superintendent Weezy as we begin to do a presentation of Sustain Verona. We're excited to have our guests here today to talk about what this could look like.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
We're excited for this presentation. About 6 months ago, maybe a little longer, I get the dreaded red light blinking on my phone, and 99% of the time, it's a salesperson wanting to sell the Verona Area School District something, and I can usually delete it on the halfway through. And I got a blinking red light, and it wasn't a salesperson, it was the guy to my left, who was interested in starting some conversations around the possibility of partnering on a solar panel project with the school district. And I think Dave, quite frankly, was surprised that the door was open and we sat down and figured out how we might do this. And after meeting every 3 to 4 weeks for the last 6 months or so, we're ready to bring a proposal to the school board tonight. So before I get into the agenda, I'm actually going to have Dave and Audrey introduce themselves. Hoping Dave will give us a little history lesson on how long he goes back with the Verona Area School District, and we can hear a little bit what Audrey's got planned.
Well, my name is David Lonsdorf. I had 3 kids go through the Verona School District. The first one was a 5th grader in 1984 when I moved here, and is now 51 years old. He still has the triple jump record on the Hall of Fame here at Lonsdorf. Then I had 2 other children about 10 years after him, Richard Lonsdorf and Catherine Lonsdorf. So I love the Verona School District. We've lived here 40 years, and it's my home at this point. So.
I'm Audrey Holmke. I'm a senior here at Verona, and I'm going to UW-Madison next year and majoring in microbiology and global health.
So David's here to represent, and they both are, Sustain Verona, and Audrey's a student voice. We've already told her she's going to need to pass the baton when she's no longer senior status here on Sunday, and we will continue to make sure we've got student voice in the mix regarding this promising project. So what we're hoping to go through tonight with the board, certainly stop us if you have questions along the way. We're going to give a little bit of a background on Sustain Verona, and that will certainly be David. Audrey's going to get into a little bit about Green Club, so you guys get double dip on student clubs at the high school tonight. Then we're going to step into the potential role the Verona Area Education Foundation has, and I know John's a member of their board and potentially could add a little bit there. Then we want to tip off a project to the board to see what our interest might be in a shared funding endeavor for this project. I've got a couple ideas on ways we might fund it. We'll do a little summary of grant opportunities that usually go along with projects just like this, and then we're interested in board feedback along the way. So I'm going to turn this slide over to Sustain Verona, and Dave's going to give us a little history lesson there and kind of where they're at and where they plan on going.
So I started Sustain Verona about 1.5 years ago, just with an idea that we ought to do something in our community to try to make a more sustainable future for the community. I just felt like other communities, Middleton, Fitchburg, Sun Prairie, were doing a lot more than Verona was. And I thought maybe if I formed a public advocacy group and got friends and neighbors from both the town and the city, that we could spark some action. The first thing we did, actually, I met with the mayor of the city, Luke Diaz, and said, I noticed you had a sustainability committee that met until 2019 and then stopped meeting because of the pandemic, but somehow you never started meeting again. And he said, yeah, I meant to get to that. And almost as quickly as Chad agreed to meet with me, Luke just said, yeah, we'll restart the committee. And at this point, they've had 6 or 7 meetings already. They're putting solar panels on 2 city buildings and have hired a sustainability coordinator and moved forward very quickly. And I thought, wow, that's pretty good. A little while later, I read a newspaper article about this Sauk Prairie School District where citizens got together and convinced the school district to put solar panels on their high school. They raised about $200,000 in about 6 months and partnered with the school, and I think they've already put the panels on the building at this point. And I thought if they can do it, we ought to be able to do that here. And that resulted in the call to Chad, basically, who I was happy did pick up the phone and talk. The slide shows what we're interested in. It's climate action on renewable energy, reduced emissions, land restoration, native habitat restoration. And we're willing to sort of talk to anybody who wants to do those kind of things. And if part of the idea of partnering with the school district is to get our name out there in order to raise money for this project. We're going to have to get out in the community, talk to a lot of people, hold a lot of meetings, create a splash and try to collect as much money as we can. That's going to also get the message out. So even if we're not successful in raising the amount of money I think we can raise, we'll at least have helped to educate people on a lot of stuff. So.
Thank you, sir. Audrey, want to give us a little summary of the Green Club here?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-presidents of Club Green, and we have about 30 members, sometimes more, sometimes less, average. And we have bi-weekly meetings where we have different activities planned at those meetings. And then some of the examples of the things are like what we do are in the pictures. So we had like a chalk day on one of our meetings where we like chalked out environmental messages outside the school where everyone walks in every day so they could see those. And then we did a community trash pickup out by the baseball fields, kind of downtown. And then we also brought in the owner of Alice Good Coffee Shop to talk about how they implement sustainable initiatives within their business, which was really interesting. So some of the things we do is aluminum can collection in the school. There's a lot of like aluminum can drink consumption at the school. So like all those cans are just going in the garbage. And so we make something called bubbler boxes where we take recycled boxes and put liners in them. And then they're in a lot of teachers' rooms. And then people know to just put like their bubblers in those boxes. And then bi-weekly we have a team of students from our club go and pick them up. And then we get money for them. So that's kind of how we are preventing some more waste from going in the landfill. And that's kind of how we were able to like fund some of our activities is through that money from our can collections. And then, like I said, trash pickups. We were able to do it in the fall because the weather was a little bit gross, but we did one this spring. And we even had a lot of people like on the trail say like, oh my goodness, like we're so happy you're doing this. It's so dirty. So that was really like affirming to know that like we're making a difference in the community. And then we also brought in guest speakers, like I said, Ralph from Alice Good Coffee Shop. And then we've done a lot of fundraisers this year, both in the school. We recently just did a dirt cup sale, which was super successful. And then we also did a flower bouquet sale for the new winter dance, which also went over well because we didn't have anything like that before. And then we also did a North and South fundraiser, which was very successful. And then yeah, we've done a few other things as well, but we're doing fundraisers both internally at the school and externally with other businesses. And our goal for like this year was to implement indoor electric composting. And we worked with Mr. Cox. It didn't quite happen this year, but we have all the composters to implement next year. We had to do a lot of fundraising, planning, talking with different teachers to kind of get everybody on board, meet in the middle, because yeah. So there's just, everyone has a different perspective on things. So we just kind of have to meet in the middle and came up with a plan for how this is going to work. And then we had to do a lot of fundraising because they're very expensive. So yeah, so that's going to be happening next year. But, yeah.
And we do think there's lots of opportunity for student voice in this project.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we are hoping to work with the state of Verona and the Verona Area School District to help the solar panel project like happen and just get youth and student voice out of the community and show the students really are caring what's going on and being involved.
Audrey also I know an unnamed superintendent would use a bubbler box in his office. You consume one or two, you might have to hook up for that down the road. All right. Next, Marcy's out and would have been kind of the district staff liaison to the Verona Area Education Foundation. I know the board's familiar with them. They come on an annual basis, and you're familiar with, I think, many of their annual projects that include the teacher grant program and the student banner contest. We've had David, and I think probably Brad, they've met a few times with the Verona Education Foundation, and here tonight to let you know that we have preliminary approval through them, and this will be a big step for our foundation to actually be the organization that the tax-free entity that eventually accepts donations through Sustain Verona and then passes on to the school district and would endorse it, which is a big deal for us to be able to keep this all in-house. There are other third-party 501c3s that will do this that would charge probably much more than they will end up kind of paying our foundation to do it. And it also is, I think, they're viewing it as a potential growth opportunity for some of the work they've done. John, I don't know if you did anything else to add. I think you've kind of dipped in and out of this idea with the foundation.
Yes. I have nothing to add. That was a great summary.
All right, perfect. All right, and now for the drum roll and kind of what we're thinking here, and then we'll get into a few things, and we would bring this back to the board if we get some positive feedback this evening. With some positive feedback and Q&A from all of you, down the road, we envision a time, probably in the not too distant future, potentially paired with us kind of going through summer budget season here. We would potentially ask the board for $250,000 of money we would likely set aside, potentially even as dedicated fund balance, that we could only spend it on a project related to facilities maintenance that we would kind of earmark for this purpose, with the idea that the district would be a one-to-one match with what Sustain Verona would have a goal to fundraise for. And I think that has been something that David and the Sustain Verona team have brought to the district a number of times. There's a little piece of this that we've got some skin in this game. And on the fundraising side, I think it's exciting for donors to hear that not only are we just kind of a grassroots effort related to this fundraising project, but really dollar for dollar match from the district if we head in this direction. So the proposal would be we're in for $250,000. Sustain Verona would be in for $250,000, and we would continue to work through the Education Foundation to accept these donations as a certified 501c3. I have a few ideas on the potential funding source. One, we presented to the board and got kind of some affirmations around the idea of selling a small chunk north of Country View on a land sale. And we have been talking anywhere from $250,000 to $275,000 on the price for that sale. Those meetings are still happening on a weekly basis with the city, and I think progressing nicely. So that has the possibility of being one-time funds that school districts do not typically spend well. We like to hire people that are not one-time funds. This would be a great spot to potentially use one-time funding to set that aside for this effort. We have the potential of burying it or building it into the 25-26 budget, but we don't know what the state budget looks like quite yet. And there's always fund balance that we would have available if the board thought that was a better spot to find that money. But we can have those discussions a little bit more down the road. But wanted to at least give you a few initial ideas I had if we got positive board feedback tonight regarding this project. So we've had John Remmer meet with Westfall Electric. Westfall was the company that wired the high school and actually did the Sauk Prairie Solar project. And they are, I would kind of consider them a Southern Wisconsin leader in this sector, and did a structural analysis of our high school and kind of our south roof membranes there that are highlighted with a little bit darker or brighter, however you look at it. Blue there on the end would be likely where we would end up starting to put the solar array. This is a bigger system than we would put to start on for $500,000. But I also think it shows that this building was built to handle a solar array on a relatively new roof membrane. The electrical connections into our building are a perfect spot to have solar panels there. I also think there's a nice piece of being able to see solar panels from Verona Road when you're heading out to Mount Horeb. That I, in some regards, I think we've heard from folks that were a little surprised that solar panels didn't go on the original high school. So this is already an ultra efficient building, is the size it is, and I think there's massive opportunity here, and this would be really just a foot in the door to get this work started. So these are just initial estimates. I didn't know if we had any kind of kilowatt geeks in the audience that were interested in this stuff. But the system right now for about a $500,000 system, once we sprinkle in some grants, would be roughly 300,000 kilowatts. An interesting tidbit, we spend $600,000 a year just to keep the lights on and keep the electricity on in this school. So this would actually just be a small portion of our overall electrical need for the school district. The return on investment for this would be 7 years, which I would I guess, pitch to all of you that there's an almost immediate return on investment. If some of our students can watch this be built, potentially even have student interns help with some of this, seeing the data and analytics in terms of what the system can produce. And in some regards, I've said this to David as a former science teacher, we're not going to save the planet at the high school here with a $500,000 solar array. It's work like the work David's doing and Audrey's doing to educate folks on being environmentally conscious that actually can turn the tide when it comes to excess carbon emissions. It isn't the solar array by itself. I think it's the act and the fact that we're churning out 500 graduates a year that we want to be green, wise citizens. So in the end, the system has a 30-year lifespan, which would mean after 7 years, it is paying for itself as long as all the hardware works on the roof. There are a few grant opportunities. We just peeled this in just to let the board know that in the event that we take off with this, we would be chasing any federal or local funds available to help offset some of the cost of the system. Some of these are rather easy. Some of them may be a little more time consuming. So next steps, we're interested in hearing from the board. If you say, yes, Chad, David, Audrey, keep looking into this. We would be excited to pursue a potential board vote to endorse this. Once we got a project together, we bring it back to you for a vote. And that would include a finalized funding source that I'd recommend to all of you. Questions or feedback? Christopher.
So who's in the energy sector, the sector is growing, and I would love to see, especially you mentioned internships or types of STEM programming. As we're thinking about the industry within the fusion sector, we're 10 years out from fusion being a reality, and how do we build those STEM pathways for students into those careers? So I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to think about potential programming. We own solar on our house, so we're big supporters of solar. We had solar on our house in Seattle as well, so understand the benefit of that as well. So I think we may not solve our energy problem or greenhouse gas problems at just one local school, but the potential for really encouraging and getting our students involved into this sector, because it is a growing sector. I think it's something that we need to be cognizant of. And the math in my mind works out. It's just how do we get there, but I'm very supportive.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the comment I want to make too, which is that we talk a lot, rightly, that we're trying to create good environmental citizens. This is the right thing to do for the climate, for the planet. But the thing I don't want to get lost, because we're elected to be stewards of our taxpayers' dollars, this is also the right financial thing for the district. And I'm very supportive of this, and I'd like to see this not just as a sole project, but as the first step towards moving towards our entire district being, on renewable energy sources.
Agreed. I think this is a great start for us to get our feet wet with this.
Chad, I have a quick question, just kind of along those lines. Is the return on investment after approximately 7 years, is that based on the initial phase plan? We have a photo with a larger scale, but the return on investment would be similar?
Yeah, so, and this is in flux. And for a while, my guy David, I think, was getting cold feet because the federal government is doing something different every day regarding these types of, I think, rebates and grants. And tariffs, quite frankly, might be at play if some of these solar panels are made overseas. So the data we got on the return on investment would be the return on investment for the district's fund portion of the solar array. And that can be in flux. The arrays get slightly more efficient. The prices have been kind of going like this and steadily going down. And I do think down the road, there would be the possibility of even putting together a more comprehensive sustainability plan, where maybe we are just pitching some money into that idea on an annual basis that's just built into our budget. Yeah, the return on investment would be 7 years for our portion, but subject to change. We would, once we got the $500,000 pooled together, we would go through a formal RFP with specs on the system and have contractors come and kind of pitch their system to us. And the one that we would want, one of the specs would be that this is expandable and that we could kind of latch onto it in the future.
In consideration as well, I know that in Seattle, for Seattle Citywide, we were putting together a social responsibility portfolio of who produces solar arrays based on social criteria. So one example of that would be we're looking at producers that aren't using prison labor for production. So I'll just consider that once we start moving down the line of looking at things, if this goes through, that that's a consideration that we're looking at the social impact as well, not just the environmental.
And it's good feedback. I'll take a note on that one. Other thoughts or questions?
I love that we have student voice and we also have community voice, but we're not sitting here for any other reason. It is for our students and to represent our community. So I give you to here spearheading this project. I love what you're doing with the Green Club Green.
Yeah.
I also think you use the box. So there's work to be done at this table, but we really appreciate the students' voice in this. And I think this is something where it is marrying the community's interests and the students' interest in this building that ultimately belongs to our community. So I appreciate that this is something that came to us.
Yeah, fully supportive, excited. I think just as a note, again, to the student aspect of this, that, to the points of why this is a great symbolic move, in terms of bringing our equity framework to life and having students become stewards of the environment moving forward. I think it's a really good reminder that I realized just going to Chicago this past weekend that we really are in a very special place in something as simple as recycling. I mean, so really, right, to take that energy to start it here and to give students the perspective that how we think about things here maybe isn't the way that everyone thinks about the power of even the small steps. So I appreciate all that you're doing. And again, the support of Mr. Cox too, to have just all of these grassroots things happening, and it just kind of feels like the merging, right, of the big project, the smaller places, and how we can keep elevating everything in between. Great to have you both here.
Yeah, I appreciate the sustainability, the advocacy muscles that you guys are building with students. I mean, saw just with the mental health side. Yep. Now we're seeing the environmental side, so I love that work. I see Dave all the time out on the trail where I walk my dog. So he actually lives this every day. It's sustained Verona. So I appreciate you here, Dave, for all that you're doing. This is awesome stuff for our community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I think next
The
steps
next
are
time you
onward.
see us,
Yeah.
this will be a fully baked idea. We might even have trifolds with QR codes for all of you.
Excellent.
But we'll be excited. We'll get the group back together, then debrief this board meeting, and we'll bring it back, hopefully even for a board vote. So super exciting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, everybody. Nice to see you, Dave. Thank you, Audrey.
Congratulations, Audrey, again.
See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.
Yay, see you. Pay it forward. Continuing superintendent's report, yeah.
Excellent. All
Sounds
right, next on our superintendent's report, we're proud to bring the team together to do this, it's more of an update as we promised to the Board of Education at a previous meeting on the progress of the Student Learning Pathways Foundations, 1st through 8th grade. And we'd like to thank Carly, Dr. Hallberg, and Dr. Hawkins for, and you already have you do already have the, excellent. Thank you.
So this evening, we're going to hear, as Dr. Clarity said, from Dr. Hellberg and Carly Adams, along with other amazing staff members that are here tonight, to support and uplift the work of K Foundations, the program that is just a small piece of extended learning pathways. This also serves as to foreshadow, in a few weeks, we're going to present OE11, and one of the indicators is new and innovative programs. And so this is one of the new and innovative programs that will be highlighted in that OE report. 1 year ago, Foundations was still an idea. Last year, a team of dedicated educators met frequently to learn, explore, and create. Today, we have a space where students are thriving with clear results, and you're going to hear success stories. The work that you are going to hear about tonight directly aligns with the strategic framework priorities of student agency, wellness and mental health, and inclusive teaching and learning. This program was created because students needed something more, not just to reduce seclusion and restraint, but to provide meaningful, student-centered support that expanded our continuum of services here in Verona. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Halbert and Carly, and they're going to talk to you all more about the amazing work that is happening at Foundations.
Thanks. So first of all, I'm going to introduce two of our staff members. The one taking the picture is Patty Dietrich, and she is our current special education teacher at Foundations. And we have Rebecca Ryan, who I stole from another agency. And she was originally our Foundations teacher, and then she transitioned into our behavior support coach. And so she works very closely between Patty, Rebecca, and Carly. That is our team that really supports our most complex students on a day-to-day basis. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the results, and then I'm going to turn it over to Carly, and she's going to talk about how did we get there? What were the strategies that we used to have such an impact in such a short time? And so just to kind of go back in time, the goal of Foundations when we set this up is to really to teach the students the skills they need to be successful, but knowing that it had to be in a smaller environment and using that smaller environment to help them then transfer the skills into a classroom setting. During the entire process, we really develop a collaborative partnership between the school, the family, and many of our students have a lot of outside agencies, so we work really closely with our outside agencies as well. In our program, we meet at least once a month with that whole team and say, how are things going? What do we need to do differently? And sometimes we meet more often than that. When we were looking at Foundations, we really thought it as a tier 3 intervention. So it's intended to be short-term for students so that they can acquire the skills and then carry that back over into the neighborhood school. So one of the data sources that we really focused on when we were developing our Foundations is the seclusion and the restraint data. And that's what you see up here on the chart. So the first two columns, when you look at the restraints, the top chart, the first two columns includes the data related to all students. And we looked at last year and then this year. And we went month by month to just kind of say, how are we doing? Are we meeting our intended outcomes? What do we need to do differently? As you see with our restraint data, we are down 53% in our restraints from the whole school compared to last year at this time. And when you look at our Foundations data, which is the last two columns, it's the Foundations is all the students that have been in Foundations, and it's their data both at Foundations and the neighborhood school. So it's their entire school day. And again, we are down significantly in the use of restraints for our students who were here last year as well. When we look at our—
Can I just clarify that one more time so I heard what you were saying correctly? So the third column, Foundations for 23-24.
Yep.
So those are students who are currently in Foundations, but that would have been their data from only being in their home school all of last year because Foundations didn't exist.
Correct.
So now we're looking at their comparison data, which is still a blend of Foundation space and home
Correct.
site space.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure I said that back so I'm.
Yep, you have that. And then the thing that is different is there were a couple students who were not in our district last year who transferred in. And some of our students are new to the district this year in our numbers in 24-25, and they were not included in our numbers last year, just because they weren't in our district. And so when you look at that, when you look at chart 2, we're also looking at the number of seclusions within our district. And so again, all students, the number of seclusions have significantly reduced. We were a little bit higher in the use of seclusions at foundations this year compared to last year. But again, we don't have all of our students in last year's staff.
Just want to clarify that too, for students who attend foundations, not that all of the seclusions took place at
Right.
foundation.
Right, thank you.
So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn it over to Carly. And we met our outcome, one of them, which was to really help our students be safer so that they could engage in the learning and really access that grade level standards. And so I'm going to turn it over to Carly, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the strategies that we used to help make all of this come to life.
So really 4 key strategies, and we go back and look at the year of like, how do we get to this point? And a lot, primarily, right, it's the work of our like dedicated educators across both foundations and the neighborhood school, right? It's the people doing the work, and some of the strategies that those people use, we continue to use are the environment, right? That was our primary driver when we designed this program last spring. If we change the environment, what's the impact for our students? So that includes the physical space, who is in that space, right? Other adults, other students, what things are in that space, right? Everything in the environment serves a specific purpose. If it doesn't serve a purpose, it doesn't need to be in there. Secondly, our work break routines. That's really the bread and butter of what we're explicitly teaching students to do in order to participate in academic routines in the neighborhood school. So that looks like students engaging in work at the table, whatever work means for that particular student, and then taking a structured break. This is repeated throughout their time at foundations, and we've seen a lot of success of teaching this routine and having students use this same routine at their neighborhood school for the remainder of their day. Regulation support, so includes visual support, practicing regulation tools and strategies, engaging in sensory exploration activities, access to structured movement choices, all with the intention of proactively teaching regulation in order to get students' bodies ready to return to learning. So a lot of that interoception of how is my body feeling, what do I need in order to be able to participate in academics. And then de-escalation strategies. So fine-tuning of our highest leverage staff reactive approaches when challenging behavior does surface. So these are purposeful strategies used to de-escalate a student in order to avoid risk behavior. Risk behavior, if it does present, we also have advanced physical skills training that is different from neighborhood school, which is one additional level of our nonviolent crisis intervention training, just to, again, help mitigate some safety risks for both the students and for the staff. Our other indicator throughout the year has been feedback survey data. So we formally asked for feedback 3 times this year, end of September, end of January, and end of April. I believe last time we were here, we were sharing the feedback from end of September. So this is our feedback from end of April. And that's how well are we meeting our intended program goals. So staff here includes the entirety of the students' team at the neighborhood school. So case manager, SCAs, our administrators, our assistant principals, student services, related services, really anyone who we interface with who supports that team, asking them to participate. Caregivers here is the family and those community support providers that Dr. Halbert mentioned before. So really everyone who cares about the student when they leave the school building as well. This feedback was used to help drive our next steps. Some of the open-ended commentary you can see on the handout here, some really good just anecdotes from both our caregivers and from our teams reporting feelings of belonging and support as we think about programming for students with complex learning profiles.
How many, when you shared with us the size of about how many folks were given that survey?
I sent the staff survey to roughly 55. Our end size here is 18. Our end size for caregiver feedback is 5, which is 3 more than last time I sent it out. Very exciting to have feedback. And right, like the 100% agree or strongly agree does not mean we are doing everything right and that families and caregivers don't have really constructive feedback to give us, but it is letting us know that these families feel a place of belonging in our district again. What we've learned, the best way to understand all that we're doing is to see it. We use the strategy with our other educators in neighborhood schools, like let's take videos and show you what we're doing. So Lori wouldn't mind queuing us up.
Our incredible student R, well, he's back. And this time he's presenting us with a different type of challenge. How can we provide academic rigor for all students?
Right. We are at high girl, right? Nice reading, dude. Touch telephone. Touch ice cream. Clear it out and read.
And Mr. R is not our only student to move into academic progress this year. Let's watch our other readers.
See, what does it say? Look. See. Let's read it. Ready? See. Remember. What is this story about?
Yeah.
You're right, Memorial Day.
The dog sits on a rug. The dog sits on a rug. The man has a map. Good, okay. The sun is hot. Which one? Good job.
As we better meet student needs related to safety, belonging, and consistency, students are then able to access academic learning. And our students taught us that there are important other skills they were able to practice when presented with a structured opportunity to do so. We practiced problem solving. We practiced friendship skills and sharing. We learned to get our bodies ready for learning through both calm activities and movement choices. We learned how to participate in morning meeting and the daily calendar routine. And we had some fun. Lots of fun. And while there were difficult moments and some difficult days, we learned that school feels safe. School is a place where my needs can be met, and adults care about me. And truly, kids do well when they can. Remember our incredible...
Turn it back over to you, Dr. Ford. Well, the video says it all, and so thank you, Carly. She does such a great job. That's why I wanted you to do this part. So thank you for capturing that and for.
Remember our incredible student R.
So thank you for capturing that and for just showcasing how our students can learn when the environment is right. And so we have learned a lot this year, and the team is really committed to continue to scale up the extended learning pathway program. Now, some might say, foundations was great. Let's make it more. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it all day. And really, foundations is grounded in the belief that students should have access to their grade level peers, as well as having access to the neighborhood school. And we are really committed to those two beliefs. And as much as people say, well, let's just have it, make our foundations a full day program, it really is a pillar of our design, and it sets our program apart from many others throughout the state and throughout the country. And I think we should feel really proud about that commitment. And people are noticing the difference that our program is in our district. Carly will be presenting at a national conference on the work that she's doing in the fall. We have had every Dane County district come and visit our program. There have been central office staff from other districts visiting our program. There are districts that are going to be implementing this program next year and are using the work that was committed and done by this team. They've had researchers from the UW reach out, and they want to do collaboration with the work that we're doing. So when we say that we're a district of excellence, this is a really strong example of meeting the needs of our students. And even though it's hard, it's really important to allow our students that access. And so some of our next steps are to expand it to the high school, because our high school students also need this opportunity. And so really looking at the data and scaling it up, and continuing to do that scale and spread. We are also, we view foundations as kind of our test site. And so we will continue to use that as a place where we will try new things based on the research and then test it and scale it out with great opportunities for learning with our staff that are present. We have learned a lot about how we rotate our staff so that it's a variety of people are learning, and the ripple effect is huge in that it carries over into the school, and the staff feel really valued with that piece, and they get the direct training that is really hard to come by and a really unique aspect of the program. So we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to work on the communication. We know being in the first year, it's not perfect yet. So continuing to work on that. We will continue to work on a really successful piece is we used Bucaro blocking pads, and it's another way for our staff to feel safe when our students have low access moments, and we will expand that throughout the schools. And we also, just with these guys looking at the research, they worked on pathological demand avoidance, and there are some great strategies that help our students, especially some of our students with autism, to just different approaches on how to work with our students and interact with them. And our staff have found it to be very beneficial, and we'll continue with that next year. And so it's been a great year, and let's see where it goes. So,
what questions do you all have for us?
I just wanted to say, I had a chance to see the space earlier this year. It's a beautiful space, and wanted to thank you for your phenomenal report and heartfelt report. I know that the video brought me tears to tears, and I appreciate that a lot. And I know that it's phenomenal work that you're doing, and the impact you're having on so many lives is immeasurable. So thank you for your work.
So last year when we were talking about this, I have to say, as a really outdated special education teacher, I was nervous about, in the history of programming, where this would be, where this lands. It sounded familiar, but you were really clear in what you wanted this program to look like and how it differed from maybe my initial, preconceptions about it. And I'm just, first of all, grateful for the walking through this with the board and helped us kind of see this is truly a different program than anything that's been really contemplated in the past, and the commitment to ensuring that there's integration with, homeschool. That's such a key piece, and I'm so grateful that that was true to the whole environment of it. And I think reading the feedback from the caregivers when it's, he can fully be himself, and you can return to self-confidence, and those things are the exact things that we were concerned we would lose, and instead that's the place where it was found. So as a doubter, I am so thrilled to say I was absolutely wrong about my preconceptions, and that's, first of all, thank you to the patients that you've had in the past year in keeping us informed and bringing us along. And thank you so much for the work that you have done to truly bring to life something that clearly is meeting the needs of our students, which is absolutely critical. But you're also meeting the needs of our other staff members. It's pretty remarkable. So I'm just grateful, and it's quite a turnaround in a year, from my opinion, but you had the vision the whole time. So thank you. Thank you all for doing this. Thank you for doing this.
I'm gonna second all of that. I don't think I hid my skepticism last year either as much.
You had a tough crowd last April,
Yeah.
I think.
As we like to have, right?
And I also had a chance to come out and visit it, when Chris was talking about last fall when you guys set it up. And I just, everything that Marilyn said I feel the same way. I'm happy to have had my skepticism proven wrong. And you could see it last fall in the space you guys created, and this is just a reaffirmation of that, and it's been great. So thank you.
Go ahead, Jen.
We've talked at the board table a lot of times about how we can be more innovative in how we address challenges that we have. And I think just the fact, just how you all did, this is exactly what we're talking about. And now that this program and all the staff who help build it and who make it work every day are leaders in our county and the state and the country for how we address these challenges that other people face. And this is exactly what I think we want to see at the board. So be very proud of that.
I think I just also want to elevate, over the past number of years of serving on the board, I've talked to a lot of families whose students are not being served by foundations, but whose students have struggled in our schools. And so this was something I know I was most optimistic of, and wondering just pragmatically, how does this play out to help staff at the home sites to be able to have that through fair, just from an energy and capacity standpoint for all of you, and then the energy standpoint for all the classroom teachers as well. And the hope I have of the impact that more students will feel as all of our staff, right, gain more tools in their toolbox on how to navigate challenges, that it isn't just this small group that happens to be at foundations. At least that's the general statement I'm going to grab from some of the data and the sentiment I'm hearing, but that's my overall optimism, is how we all as a district, all of our staff show up in ways that can support any learner that may be having struggles on any given day beyond foundations, within foundations.
I think a good example of that would be Sugar Creek. So with the PDA, you all did it at foundations, and then the principal saw it, and then immediately you all were able to do that training with the entire staff.
Can you say I know it was in the report, can you say the full title?
Pathological abandonment.
Thank you.
Or pervasive drive for autonomy, depends who you ask.
So it was a training that was done at foundations early on. Some of the staff at Sugar Creek were able to take advantage of it. They found it so incredibly helpful. There was monies available, and then the principal brought that training back to the entire staff. So that's exactly the hope and the goal of this program, that the training and the professional development that happens there, the ripple effect then cascades to the building, so that the entire staff can also use it with other students.
And that's the data I search create, right? Is families that have historically felt I have a student that comes from a trauma background and just really struggling at school. What are the outcomes that are noticing for some of the students that are not in foundations but are experiencing the benefit of all of the staff training and the experiences here? It's really amazing.
Yeah, I'll second all this again, as someone who's worked in the space for a while. I think when I came on the board, one of the first things I told Dr. Clarity was that special ed educators are some of the most innovative educators out there. Like, that should be leveraged. And this is just an excellent example of that, and change spreading far and wide, so.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. This
Thank-
is also
Dr. Hallberg's
last presentation.
Yes. Yes. Thank you again for your service, Dr. Hallberg. All right, board, we have one more piece of our superintendent's report. And again, this is the AGR reports that can and have in the past lived in consent, but we've elevated, and thanks to the team for giving some voice to these, just because there's a lot of data with this, and I think it helps us as a board and community to understand kind of what these reports are all about.
So thank you for the opportunity to be here. Always fun to follow inspirational student voice videos with reports to DPI, but excited that we can provide some context because we know how our state funding helps to support the important work that we're doing with students. So as we jump in, just a note, we have titled this Achievement Gap Reduction because that is the program as it's titled by the state and DPI. We also know that Carlos read our equity framework as we began this evening, and we in the Verona Area School District don't refer to achievement gaps, but instead talk about barriers to access and barriers for opportunities for our students. So we typically refer to this as AGR. That's how you'll see it. That's how you'll see it listed. But as Jen noted, part of our contract with DPI in being an AGR site is that we provide updates to the board twice a year, at semester and at the end of the year. And typically these would be in consent, but when we presented back in September or was in consent, the board wanted further discussion and wanted us to pull that out to have more context for what is AGR, what's the impact on our sites, what's the history of it, and what are the strategies that we're using. So that is what we are hoping to provide a bit more context for this evening. So AGR is a program that replaced SAGE. SAGE stood for Student Achievement Guarantee in Education. Beginning in the 2017-2018 school year, it shifted to be called AGR. AGR is a funding program from the state that is meant to target K-3 sites. So our 4 neighborhood elementary schools are AGR sites. And the contract is contingent upon us receiving funding for using one of the 3 strategies that's listed there or a combination of them. You'll notice in our individual school reports, which are attached, you'll see that most of our sites are really leaning into instructional coaching and class size reduction. Right? Instructional coaches are working really intentionally at our K-3 sites to make sure that we are aligning our student outcomes with specific strategies and providing the professional learning to support that. Our instructional coaches have also provided really instrumental support this year when we built our Late Start Mondays and our Roll-Alike training to really implement our new core literacy resources. And then of course, just supporting and maintaining lower class sizes at K-3, knowing how critical foundational skills are and being able to have those touch points with students to really build that up. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa, our Director of Elementary Ed, just to talk through what this is looking like, link us to the reports, and give you a little bit of background on the funding itself.
Yeah, I'm just going to draw attention to one of the main changes when we switched from SAGE. As a building principal who was a SAGE school for many, many years, there was a lot of angst because the minute you had 19 students in that section, you had to hire a whole new teacher in the section. And that could happen anywhere within that school year. And that happened to us often, which really wasn't the best planning. And so when we spoke with the state, and we were some that really talked to them about how this was helping our students and how this was hindering some of our best planning, is when they made some of these changes. So now it's not specific to class size, it's intended to keep class sizes lower at the K through 3, it's really recognizing that there are other strategies that we could do as schools to plan differently instead of relying just on that number, and then really changing the planning that we had for the year. So as Amy mentioned, this is state funded, and how it works is every fall as a building principal, you get a spreadsheet from the state and you indicate the number of free and reduced students per classroom in all of those grades. So for K through 3, every classroom and the number of free and the number of reduced. That gets submitted to the state, and once those are determined statewide is how they determine the allocation per individual student then. Ours doesn't fluctuate too much. Again, as a building principal who had this, it was typically about 3 staff members at Glacier Edge that would be able to be funded through AGR funds that would allow us to add that many more sections to keep our class sizes lower. I was probably one on the higher end. Now that Sugar Creek is a little bit, enrollment has increased, theirs would also as well, but it was really dependent upon the number of students statewide as to how much allocation we would receive. And then of course it comes the following year, which is the bookkeeping that Chad and his team can figure out. So one of the other parts of this is the AGR report. This is a state report, but as a district, we get to determine the measure. So you do report out on reading and on math. And what we've always done since I've been here is to choose the measures that we typically look at in our data protocols. So for early literacy, for quite a long time, it was STAR and then STAR for math. We made that change this year. And so when we're looking at our 5-year contract, we have written in that we will be looking at our AIMSweb data K3, which is what we look at for our early literacy as well for our state. And then for math, right now we're using Number Corner and STAR, and we are also hoping to make the change to AIMSweb math. So we have one protocol and one platform for all of our K through 3 teachers and for our teams who are looking at data. So we have a fall baseline that you will see, and then there is, we report out in the winter, and then we report out at the end of the year. So that's the report that we refer to. We have a Dropbox that we put it in, and then as a board, you were able to see the data at all times. We also review it as a principal team as well. Again, this isn't any new data that we are not already looking at on a weekly and monthly basis in our business. So in this, each of those are links. You can go in and look at the specific schools to see the growth that they have had throughout the year in both reading and math. And then the last part of this is the actual contract. So AGR is on a 5-year contract. Back in 2007, there were not very many schools in the state that were SAGE qualified. And so they changed the qualifications because one of our sites, which was GE, was at a large percentage of free and reduced. All of our sites that were 30% or higher could apply, and now it's just continued to be able to be, we can access those funds. But we apply every 5 years. So the contract is coming up now. They're due June 16th. And in that is exactly what the report shares. It lets you, the state, and you as a board know, this is the data we'll be collecting, and this is the work that we'll do to make sure that these funds are used to have smaller class sizes and to coach into good instruction. So those are also, that's a snapshot of what that would look like. I couldn't put an entire link to that because it's not a linkable form for you to see, but that's exactly what it looks like. And so we have filled those out, and in that contract, a board member as well as Amy would sign off on those to indicate that these measures are ones that we will collect and then we'll continue to report out twice a year for you.
Just a note on that, we're working to streamline the metrics that are here, the metrics that are on our continuous improvement plan, and eventually, as we look to revise indicators, eventually aligning those metrics as well. So are we looking at AIMSweb data and students' reading performance in each of those areas? So this isn't necessarily a different way of working. It's a different form and template to capture what that looks like, but it doesn't necessarily change the work that we're doing.
We did look at this last 5 year, and so just on average, it's about $1 million per year that we are able to put back into the elementary site.
So then with this application being every 5 years, if the application is approved for the next 5 years, that funding will come every year. And it would only be if for some reason we would be denied when you apply? What would that be? What would that possibly be?
There haven't been denial.
Okay.
They're not excluding any schools who have access to it.
Okay,
Can't add new schools any longer.
okay. So it's
We're able to
kind of perpetually ongoing, but yet there is this application piece.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, which is actually a good practice because our measures do change. And so it allows us to align back with the sites and then for you as a board. So you're not seeing different pockets of data that we're not measuring in the same way.
Thank you for pulling this from consent.
Yeah.
I just appreciate just as a touch point. I mean, I don't have any questions or anything just other than thank you for putting the information in front of us to help us remember this, this is happening, even if we're, and I know we're seeing this data in other forms through our monitoring reports, but this is just helpful for me to see how it goes to the state and just some of our requirements there. So thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, so as you said, no board. or no
Correct,
vote,
yeah, there'll
just
be no action.
Acknowledgement
Yeah,
of receipts.
exactly.
We acknowledge.
We acknowledge, we have received. And yes, so agenda item 7 will be perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. But we are to agenda item number 6, public comment. Lori, have I missed any public comment? Okay, thank you for validating that. So then we will move on to agenda 8, because again, there is no board action to be taken on the HER reports. But thank you again for the time and space of our team. So just wanted to take a few moments to debrief the end of the year site visits, just from a standpoint of like the benefit, right, as board members in terms of feeling results in an organic way. And then I know Meredith, you kind of elevated too, and I've talked to a few of you about just the scheduling complexities that we feel as board members having full-time jobs outside of board work and how to just mitigate the fact that end of year visits clearly land at the end of the year and wanting to have as much board presence as possible. So any thoughts about any of those? If it's all right, I'd like to just start by sharing gratitude to all the sites, the leadership for just making the space to invite board members in, central office leadership to just hear, the classroom teachers that welcomed us all to just show up and be able to observe and be a part of the classroom day. It really is impactful, even as someone who is a former classroom teacher, to now have the frame of board member and just be back in classrooms and at the schools, to hear the data at just that little extra granular level than how we sometimes, have to hear it at the board table. So I just find those opportunities to be really rich, and I wish I could also attend all of them because they're just so incredibly beneficial. I see lots of nods, but anything that anyone else just wants to share about their experience related to the site visits?
Yeah, I mean, I went to a number of them this year, and every year I'm like, I'm gonna go to all of them, and then I can't, obviously, but it's such a powerful way to be able to think about the policy and then the operational and the results policy reports that we see once a year in action in the classroom. And also it's just a great way, not just as a board member, but as like a community member, to like go in and re-ground myself in the work that's actually happening. And you go into a classroom, you actually see everybody like learning math and learning in different ways and at different speeds, and it's just mind blowing. Like, I can't teach math to my own kids. So it's just amazing to see all that happening and the complexity that goes into that. It's pretty awesome. And this year in particular, to see it all happening in such a calm, quiet setting. I think in the 4 schools and 8 classrooms I went to, I saw a phone, 1. And and I mean, my phone went off in this meeting, so obviously I have no clue what I'm talking about. But like, it's just a powerful reminder that like, the real work is happening, like in small and big ways in the classrooms.
I would share, absolutely, I wish I had more time to attend and go to other sites. But I did want to say thank you to the staff for the amount of time that they put in to preparation for our arrival and to be there. And I know that takes a lot of effort. And so thank you for being present and much effort you placed to welcome us. And it's great, like you're saying, John, just seeing kids in action and learning in action. Because we can talk theory and talk budgets and detail and reports, but it's the everyday interactions with students and what they're doing in the classroom with the teachers and all of the support staff. That's what we're here for. So thank you.
So this is the year that I couldn't make any of them. And this is one where, having been to these in the past, they are so valuable. And I would have been the one who was calling me up saying, you need to do whatever you possibly can to get there. And I know just sometimes you just simply can't. So what I want to make sure is that the value of being in schools is undeniable. I do recognize like the amount of work that staff have to put into our visits is also not insubstantial. I would love to, the end of the year visits are fantastic. Is that something that we can maybe talk with administration too, to figure out how do we, is that an annual thing? Is that maybe a once every 3 years or the big end of the year visits? Is it something, but being in the schools annually is critical. And maybe is there a way that that can work throughout the year? Because missing that takes away our touch point here at the table. And that it is hard scheduling sometimes when it's all condensed, which there is definitely a value to the end of the year. But if that means that it doesn't happen at all, then we're missing what we need as board members. And I think, you know, I don't want to, unduly burden our staff to like have to put on such polished presentations every year in the midst of everything else that's going on. Because May is traditionally pretty slow around schools, right? That's just, you know, what my understanding is. So maybe we could figure out what works with different administrators and do maybe some of them do quarterly. Just.
I've been trying to mull over like other ways,
I second that. My calendar got blown up in the end of April. It's terrible. But if the end of year does make the most sense, then perhaps just doing like a Google sheet. Here's what we're thinking for end of year visits. This is the time of year. Let's see what every board member can make given their schedule so that we can pick the slots that are absolutely available. All of us, whatever days it is, maybe it's a 3 or 4 week window, whatever you need Dr. C and the teachers, administrators for heads up, and then work around that, keep it end of year, but now you see the availability of all board members to ensure we all can make 1 or 2. Because for me this year, I was only available Wednesdays. There's no end of year visits for midday availability any Wednesday. Literally it happened every other day of Wednesday.
And I have us even just brainstorming, you know, the power of hearing some of the data points, right? And getting kind of that summative aspect in terms of just data collection, what were the goals of the site and hearing those reflections. And the classroom visits elevate that. But I also wonder about board members getting a chance to be in classrooms whenever, and how do we take kind of summative data and weight, right? Because just trying to brainstorm, are there ways to disentangle aspects of it? Are there ways that maybe, you know, we get to see, I know we get a lot of invitations from staff members to attend things, which I appreciate, and I would love to have that continue, because anytime we can see things in action that our staff is excited about is great. But I appreciate the mulling over of some of these things, because again, I hope our inability to be a group of 7 at every single end of year visit was not out of the desire and clearly the value we all hold of those spaces. So any thoughts from any administrators with what's been currently offered? Yeah.
I do appreciate that administrators.
Yeah, I'm just curious what you all think, right? And the things that we're mulling over as central office leaders. We don't have any site leaders here.
I was gonna say, I think I appreciate that administrators thought that we were like able to track all of the data. And like, oh, thank you for thinking so highly of me. I'm just happy to see you kids. And you're really doing fantastic work.
Yeah.
But like really, we did get to see data that came into our monitoring reports.
Yeah.
But just there's so much richness with those visits, even bigger than some of the work that we're monitoring regularly too. So I don't know, was that value?
I just want to add, like, one of the things is that I kind of ruminated on this year. I have a fairly nasty habit of like, we'll start talking about something and I'll just absolutely like zone out thinking about whatever I want related to that thing. Sometimes it's productive and I come up with a good idea. Sometimes not so much. This is, I think, one of the better ideas. So one of the things I was ruminating on with one of the, I forgot which school is it, but we were talking about, you know, the improvement of data around reading and, you know, celebrating the like 3% or whatever it was improvement in the number of readers that were like proficient or better. And I think, you know, at the board table, we've talked a lot about like, well, what's significant and what isn't? And you can see like the end values, well, 3%, that's like, you know, 5 or 6 kids at this school, you know, at this grade level. But then you go into the classrooms and you see like, you know, I mean, I've been in education, I know like how it works, especially teaching reading, but like you still tend to start thinking like, you know, like, and you can read now and you can read now. Like you just like, you know, little easy button sort of thing. But then you go in there and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot that you even have to explain like what a silent E is, you know, or like, you know, all these things that we just kind of take for granted and like how long that must take to move even one kid from, you know, learning up to proficient or whatever, let alone 3%, like 5 kids. And so it's really helpful to kind of ground that way. So I'm wondering, as we kind of talk forward, I think we're talking about a couple different things. There's obviously logistics around scheduling, but there's also a question of like, you know, yes, it's important for board members to go into the school, but it's important to go into the school with a sense of like, this is what I'm doing, and this is why I'm here. So it's not just like, again, like I'll walk through the school and be like, what do the bathrooms look like today? This could be fascinating, you know, like, how did we put that wood wall there? Why is it at an angle like that? It's not even a 45-degree angle. Like this is sort of stuff, if I don't have purpose for like walking through a school, like I'm gonna sit here and wonder about the adhesive holding it up. So
I think that's a you thing. I don't think.
it is a good thing, but it's also like important, like I said, let's go down the rabbit hole, but it's also important to like have that sense of purpose for all of us, I think.
No, absolutely.
Well, that's what we're doing.
One thing I think with the end of the year visits that's been so fantastic is to see just the culmination of the year's work. I mean, that's so impressive. But I think I'm also impressed to see the start of the work. I mean, that this is like what's identified as, you know, valuable and just seeing even the process of how that goes. So I'm not married to the end of the year unless that's what is best for our administrators. And again, I still, you know, maybe it makes me a little nervous for everyone out there. But I find value in any phase of it. It's not just the end result that, oh, up until this, I don't care, but now I care. I'm fascinated by how are you even identifying where this is going to go and how are you getting people on board with everything? How are you introducing students to any phase of it is valuable. So
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the end of the year, there's some unique, you know, culmination of the process. But maybe that can be something we don't have to put every school through every year. Maybe that could be a 3-year cycle. We do a couple each year where it's an end of the year visit, but the other schools we have touch points during the year.
Feels very formative and summative, doesn't it? Do some formatives at some sites and some summatives with a few sites. Yeah.
That would, I don't know, just there's, you know, these are just my speculative. I would be curious to hear what, you know, our site administrators would actually find valuable for us to see, so.
Yeah, I think for, what was interesting, I actually asked Dr. Curry about this at our last site visit was, you know, because the end of the year visits kind of tie into like a continuous improvement process, right? The schools are gonna do that, on their own, that's just part of how they operate. So it's really, I'm wondering for the board, like, there's an obvious function for the board to kind of come in and see that continuous improvement process happening. And in that sense, we're very much just an observer. I think there are other questions that board members can ask and are appropriately asked about, like, what's going on in the classrooms that you're talking about, like, how does this classroom come together in the fall? I know that when I was like doing researchy things at the university, I was like, I hated imposing on a teacher right away in the school year to like be there, even if it's just someone like a fly on the wall, because it's crazy, right? Like it's everybody's learning their space for the first time. But I think you ask a good question, like, are there other spaces where it's appropriate to kind of set up like, this is the function of a board member coming in and looking at this space and seeing what's going on. These end of the year visits, I think it's an important process, particularly because it's the end of the year of that like continuous improvement where there have been goals set and we're just kind of popping in like to see like, what are the goals? How did you do at those goals? And then each site is a little different, so I don't know if that helps.
I mean, it made me think about like observing a PLC on a late start Monday and seeing the actions that we talk about, these moving parts at the board table, to get a glimpse into what that looks like in real time. I think just it helps me feel grounded when I sit at this table. Right, it's just the observer not to be observing and judging, it just is a reminder to me about what we're actually talking about when we're sitting here.
I think there's so much that we can celebrate throughout the year, not just in the year celebrations, even though there's celebrations like, you made it through October, thank you.
You made it through February. That's, I mean, is it okay to ask for like homework to kind of have you all get some insights from site leaders about just perspectives, kind of knowing what you just heard us talk about sentiments about just, I think in general, board presence or, board connection at the site level.
So thanks for the dialogue. So Joe, do you want to go?
I'm good.
Sure. All right. When we think about the visits, regardless of the time of year that they happen, we are really trying to focus on really two main things. How does a visit help inform a decision as to the lens of the board at the board table, and what did you see in those spaces that would allow better decision making in that process? The second component of a visit is to affirm previous decisions that have already been made and the kind of the validity of those decisions. Especially we think about a scenario like this year where there's a significant investment both financially and in resource of time from our staff around the implementation of the syllabus curriculum. So you saw a lot of intentionality of seeing our teaching and learning framework play out in those spaces, the results of our PLCs, and I'm trying to report saying like start Monday because that's the space, but the collaboration is what's happening in those spaces. And there was $1 million investment or millions investment in resources. So how does that all come to light in what you see in terms of importantly, our staff being able to successfully deliver and our students being able to perform under the guidance of our staff in those spaces. So again, that can happen in multiple spaces throughout the years. I think sometimes we get caught in the world of tradition, where traditionally it has happened in specific times and places. So we're not as concerned about the time of year, but really want to make sure that it's valuable in the sense of those two things coming like that. We are positioning the board to continue to be great decision makers, and when there are significant investments, you want to see the fruits of that labor come to life.
Yeah, it sounds like alignment philosophically. So how pragmatically we play that out. Final thoughts on our end-of-year discussion?
I just always appreciate the willingness to, have to say, for sites to open the doors to us.
I just want to make a comment because I wasn't an end-of-year visit, but it was a conference after, we had a student conference, right, as a parent. But my initial conference was amazing, but I got a chance to provide feedback, and everything's always connected with the board, right? involved Saba side, involved the way that we evaluate students, I would kind of run the show when they're discussing what they're learning. And the follow-up though, that I had, the second one after everything, the follow-up blew me away. And it was like an end of year visit in and of itself, because I learned what the students are doing, how they're using the curriculum, but also how the teachers were innovating, were trying to innovate within their classroom and sharing that innovation with other teachers that were looking to implement this very same thing. And it wasn't an end-of-year visit, but you just made me think about it because we did invest a lot of money in the curriculum. And I just thinking out loud, for any of us that have kids still in the school, each of those touch points, those experiences that we have to sit down with the teachers or the classrooms is really a great opportunity to ground ourselves as a board member and also as a parent to really get to see that all come to life. So even though I'm just saying that even though I didn't get the formal experience, I did as a parent, and as a result of a board member, I got a great experience that did connect those dots. So I feel like I need to be more mindful and intentional when I'm going into these meetings to really notice these things. And it's just making me think I should come back and share that. I should have shared that experience a few board meetings ago, right after I had it. So this is all really good stuff. I was thinking, just as an idea, and I know it's just like more documentation to create, but would it be helpful if we had a one-pager that, and we talked about this, like a one-pager that grounded us before every meeting, but a one-pager that grounded us before these end-of-year visits, so that we really kind of are all thinking on the same page as we go into them. Almost like a standardized approach to, these are the main things you want to be thinking as a board member when we're present at these end-of-year sites. Just the thought, because I
In
just
some
feel
ways,
like,
that's given to us because the sites, right, when we went into the classrooms, there were things like suggested by leadership of these are the key
Right,
look
right.
fors we'd love for you to do. Yeah, I don't know.
but is there something more higher level that's just like a guiding document? I don't know, John made me think about it, that might be helpful. Just so that we're all kind of at least, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, just in the right headspace for that visit to get the most out of it, and then report something really, just very helpful when we do these summaries back at the board meetings. Just a thought. Maybe it's just something that will help me. Just to make sure I'm being as intentional as possible.
Thanks. Joe, I did have my back to for a really long time because there was so much work. So we're
Good, I'm just listening.
Okay. All right.
You guys all got it.
All right. Well, thanks, admin team. I'll be curious to just hear kind of sentiments back from leadership too, from site leadership. All right. Moving on to general board updates. Anyone have anything generally or anything related to OE8 communications in particular? I know it's listed with future dates, but graduation is this Sunday. So thanks to those of you that are able to make it. Again, totally understand for those of you that can't. We'll have, so the 4 of us, I believe, that will be there. We have quorum, so we'll have that earlier start to do the, can't think of the word, conferring of the diplomas, and then onward to graduation. And the end of the week email that we got from you, Dr. Clarity, that really awesome document. I want to call it, we had a document when I worked at UW that we called the document of wonder and power. And I feel like that was the graduation document of wonder and power that had everything about the graduation ceremony, which I found helpful. So if you haven't looked at that, folks that are going to be there, that will be helpful. All right, if nothing else, we'll move on to superintendent consent agenda. Again, related to that email from Dr. Clarity, there was extra information from Amy about the Act 20 promotion. So make sure you take
it like public, just because that seems like it's a policy and just a real quick overview. I think having read it, I know that it makes sense. This is a requirement in the state. It's fairly, all like nailed down, nice work. But I just want to I think if I was reading this from the public, I might not understand fully that.
Sure. So the Act 20 promotion policy, one of the parts of Act 20 in the state statute is that students must run a reading plan if they're scoring below the 25th percentile on our statewide screen, which is Ames Web Plus. Students continue on that reading plan, which provides them really specific supports, intervention, small group, etc. But at the end of their third grade year, if they haven't exited their reading plan, then the promotion policy goes into effect. And so at that point, the promotion policy, which we built this off of the DPI model promotion policy, really states kind of our steps that we would take. A student at the end of their third grade year is still not scoring above the 25th percentile or has not met the conditions of their reading plan. What are the steps that we would take as a district to make sure that we are making sound decisions in the best interest of that student? And so the promotion policy that is linked really goes through the work that we would do in terms of collecting data, assembling a team with representatives from administration, teachers, interventionists, and family representation as well to discuss what has been the student progress, what might be some barriers, and what additional supports can we provide. One of those supports would be intensive summer school and intensive intervention. We've actually shifted part of our summer school model this year. As a result of this, we are making sure that not just our third grade students, but all students have access to literacy through summer school. So there's a literacy component for all learners as a result. But for the purposes of this promotion policy, those third grade students that may not have met the conditions of their reading plan would then be entitled to that intensive intervention as well. And then really the team would come together to make decisions about what is in the best interest of the student. As DPI names, there are some definite, there's a lot of research based about the risks of retention for students. So recognizing the importance of taking all of those things into consideration and making the decision for students to move to fourth grade, and then what supports would be in place for students as they continue on in their monitoring. But this document really details what are all the different steps. What if a family is asking for something different from the district? What are the data points that we would look at for the decision makers in that? And what supports can families expect from us as we make sure that we are continuing to support students to build those literacy skills that are so critical.
Thanks, Amy, I appreciate that. Just since it is a requirement for, that is imposed, it's a state requirement that we have this policy in place. And I think just highlighting that there's obviously we want to ensure that all of our students are reading and meeting their goals. In reading, there's also the risk of not advancing on time. And I appreciate that there's a policy that kind of helps balance those things. And this is again something that we have to do as for this, for the state. Nate, with this being a policy, do we need to have 2 readings of this?
Yes, we should have to.
Okay, so this would be our first reading and then formal vote.
Thank you for that clarification.
I appreciate those putting out there that this is
State
statewide.
mandate. Yeah.
Just doing our best to be student-centered and forward-thinking.
And also to reiterate, we had access to links. There's video explanations, like the things that you've done for outreach to potential impacted families in the community, that there's plenty of places to learn more about what all of this entails other than through board docs. So just want to elevate that again for community members, families, that there's lots of access points that you all are doing, which is greatly appreciated.
We recognize that for families because this was the first year, to get a letter that says your student requires a personalized reading plan can create all sorts of anxiety and unknowns. And so we've created a video that was linked in board updates, and we'll be adding to our early literacy website as well to walk families through what are the very specific steps that you can expect for your student, and what are the ways that we can begin to partner with families to continue to support early literacy. Because yes, there's state statutes that govern much of the timeline for what's happening here, but really this comes back to our VASD commitment to early literacy in general. So we'll continue to work to educate families in the community as we partner with them around some of these processes.
Thank you for your communication and student-centeredness about this. And I again just wanted to pull this from consent just so we could, if I was looking at this in policy as a outside viewer, that this is what it is. This is not anything unusual or new. It is just, it is new. It is a state requirement.
Thank you. Any other questions about anything in the superintendent's consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, superintendent's consent agenda is approved. Please also look over the board consent agenda. Are there any questions? Board consent agenda is also approved. So future dates are listed, regular board meetings. We spoke about graduation. We do continue in the summer, get the good work done. And then we'll shift into board workshop. So we've got just a couple of things to touch on in terms of policies related to public comment. So thanks to Joe for giving a run at a draft of an actual GC board policy that really specifically outlines board comment. We are in workshop mode.
Thank you.
Thank you, team. Bye, thank you. I refreshed board docs, and I don't know that I saw Joe's link in there, but I did just forward it all to you via email again. So we have a hard copy in front of us, but it doesn't have your
I can
comments.
also walk through all that.
Okay. So if you all have access in front of you, there's a hard copy, but Joe also had some kind of commentary alongside. So yeah, if you want to put voice to that, Joe, that would be great. Thanks, team.
So this came up because we realized that we didn't have a formal policy on board comment that laid out kind of what our practices are. And we also talked about the history on this, specifically surrounding written comments that are submitted in advance of the meeting, which isn't historically been something that has been read aloud at every board meeting, you know, for years. As I understand it, that was kind of started during COVID as a way to still encourage public comment at meetings without having personal attendance. But it started a conversation about whether we wanted to continue that, and then realized we didn't actually have any of this written down in comment. And I volunteered to put a draft together because in my opinion, it's always easier to work off of something than to speak generally about things. So not married at all to any of the wording or terminology. A lot of this is taken from other examples I found, guidance from WASB, and then just general thoughts about how it can go. The first thing is under paragraph number 1, I put down an overall limit for the time open for public comment as 30 minutes. That's something I found in every other policy I saw. It seems a little funny because I think we've never had more than 5 minutes worth of public comment, except maybe a few times. But
please not would when you say that.
but it could be a problem. And so meetings can get hijacked unless you have it down in policy that we're limited in the amount of time. Now, I did put in that it can be extended because, you know, we should have that discretion, and so it says by majority of the board that can be extended past the 30 minutes. Elsewhere in the policy, it talks about individual comments are limited to 3 minutes apiece. So let's say theoretically you have 15 people who all want to give public comment. What's written down in policy, it doesn't have to be this way, but what's in the draft is it's first come, first served. People who turn in their comments first get to go. And that's how the 30-minute thing is handled. Jen, do you want me to walk through all of these, or do we want to talk about them individually as we go?
Yes.
Okay.
Board members?
Anyone else have thoughts?
Yeah, there's things that are coming up for you right away.
I mean, honestly, Joe, I think it's makes common sense. It's like, it lays out things in a very, reasonable way. I really like how you take out if you are not here in the written comments. The written comments are problematic, I think. Not so much that we don't want to have people communicate with us via written comment, but the reading of written comments, I think and I think it's handled well.
And that was what originally prompted this, is there is a little bit of confusion that you can send the board a whole email, and that's one way to get information to us. But if you submit it through the online portal, suddenly that gets read aloud at a board meeting, and it's a little bit incongruous. And that's one of the things we have an option for how we want to handle it. We can just say that stuff is not public comment. I did find a few policies that handle it the way I put it in here, which is that's still considered part of the official record of the board meeting and is like in board docs, but it doesn't get read aloud. We can do it either way. I only put it in as this way so that it was something to remind me to discuss it. I don't particularly have strong views, but I don't know if everybody else does.
The not reading them is my strong view.
Mhm.
I think especially when we originally did our board agenda, 2021, when we originally put all that together, we put the public comments after kind of all of the meat of the meeting. It was with the intention that community members would hear what's being presented before commenting. We've moved some things when there's been a vote coming, so that we can get voice before a vote. But a written comment that's submitted kind of circumvents the whole intent that we had with placing the public comment section. So I think this is interesting as is, so I have to,
A couple other things to mention in paragraph 3, I just put in the 3-minute limitation is enforced at the discretion of the presiding officer, just because when we have one commenter, it's not like we start a stopwatch. So I thought we'd just be a little bit flexible on that. What else? Oh, the content-based restrictions are something, before that, limiting who can make comments, but I think we articulated in a way that it's pretty much inclusive of everyone we want to be inclusive of. So I don't think that's a thing. Did put some content-based restrictions, and I think this is the main reason why it's useful to have a policy is if you're putting content-based restrictions on what a public comment can say, the guidance from WASB says that you're good as long as you direct the right avenues for those comments to go to. So when we say things like, you don't get to comment on personnel matters, the policy needs to say, but here's where you bring personnel matters to. And so that's the kind of the main value of this. And it's also ensuring that we don't get those comments about individual personnel matters, but instead we keep it to board business. Let's see, what was the last one?
Joe, is this public comment document going to be in an electronic form on the website?
That's like next layers of conversation. So
Good question. The last thing I have in here is,
Responding.
Yeah, responding to public comments. I've never felt entirely comfortable with the idea that the board can't respond in any way, shape, or form to a public comment because someone might say something that I don't feel comfortable letting lie in the space without, responding to it. And the guidance from WASB is that it's okay to make comments on public comment, but you can't take action on something that hasn't been noticed on the agenda. So that's essentially how I have it in here.
I think historically.
And I also have at the very bottom on the footer, it's obvious I took a different policy and adapted it and forgot to change the footer, and that's why it says board self-assessment. Oops.
I appreciate the 30-minute time limit because when I worked at City of Madison Parks, gone into public comment for hours.
Yeah.
Like, this is insane.
Well, and then
We need to end this meeting.
and the redundancy piece that
That's
went
the
on,
other point I
that's the
forgot to
other,
point
yeah.
out, is one of the content-based restrictions is the president or presiding officer has the authority to say no to public comments that are repetitive. So the same person can't come meeting after meeting after meeting and say the same thing. And in certain situations, multiple people can't come in and say the exact same thing. And the presiding officer has the discretion to say, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
The other
And
piece
we've
that
had
I
that before.
appreciate is also the respect piece and not threatening, because I know that, especially after this election, feeling like, oh my God, now I'm in a public setting, and the pieces that I bring to the table, I'm on high alert, just in case anything gets to me directly, and then what will be my response, or et cetera, so.
Yeah, and that was something I had a little bit of a hard time with, is how to phrase that, because that's inherently subjective, but in a way that's actually workable and usable. So if anybody has ideas for different or better wording, I'm certainly open to it. Like how to describe that specific piece of the content restrictions. I think I say, may not include threatening, abusive, harassing, or obscene language at the discretion of the board president or presiding officer. So.
Do we have the space, Joe? I'm just asking this, do we have the space the way that these are written? I'm just imagining a scenario where, say, somebody says something and I feel compelled to say, I don't like that, thereby interrupting their comments, because I might find it obscene or threatening as the vice president, and I might
Or any
speak,
board member.
yeah,
Yeah.
before Jen gets an opportunity to. Do I have the space to do that as they're written now?
I think as it's written now, no, but we can. We could change it to at the, like, I'd have to think about how to word it, but something like at the discretion. But do we want any one board member to be able to stop a public comment? Because we could also say, or by majority vote of the board.
I think the board president's job is to run the meetings on behalf of the board. So you're not acting in a individual capacity, you're acting in, that's.
My only caveat with that is, and I love.
Yep, no, please, I think we're
So-
probably thinking the same
Yeah,
thing.
So our lived experience may only limit us to catch something in a moment.
Correct.
That may not allow us to say that, so there needs to be.
That's my fear of being in that role, is I
Miss
just
it.
might not catch something.
So yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is there a mechanism for me to like not shut anybody down? I get that that's her job, but like put up a red flag and say, hey, I'm gonna stop you right there and ask if this is objectionable.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like timeout. We need
I
a
would,
pause.
I guess I would say that's always allowed.
I would agree with that, but that's,
And
I was thinking the stopping a comment
Yeah.
is the
Right.
purview of the president.
But I could like interrupt to say,
yeah,
foul, can I get a review on that?
under Robert's rules, I think that's a point of order.
Joe, wouldn't that fall under 6?
Point of
Members
order.
may be permitted to give a brief response. I mean, that would be kind of
Oh,
a brief response to.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be kind of the response after the comment is finished. I think John's saying, hold on, in the middle of the comment, timeout, presiding officer, I'm gonna suggest that this might be obscene. Could you?
Objectionable.
Yeah.
Like, how they
Oh,
would word
yeah.
it. Like, is there a way for me to like say, I object? Your Honor. That's you.
And I think, I'm of the opinion that's always any of our authority as board members to be able
We
to
need to capture that.
make a point of order.
Yeah, then how explicitly does that
Sure.
have to be written?
I don't think it has to be, but if the board wants it to be, it can be. I don't think it's harmful.
Do we want to follow First Amendment rights?
I don't think so, because it's not, what we're talking about now is just a pause on the comment to allow the presiding officer, in accordance with the policy, to decide whether the comment is okay.
And if this can even, if this whole letter B, 5B
Yeah.
can even exist, I mean, right, if that's an allowable thing to have in our policy, that to me feels like First Amendment-y, it's,
Yeah, it's viewpoint neutral, it's fine, like, it's, those that films are fine.
One thing that is, what I think would be beneficial, just historically, this has happened and it's been awkward. I want to make sure we're specifically saying that names, we aren't naming staff members directly, we are never naming students. Because people have come to have a concern about somebody who is not their own child, and we are not putting that name into a public space. So I would say that is something we absolutely need to spell out.
So that raises a couple questions.
I think for sure, we need to add a thing about naming students.
Yeah, I was just gonna say an A there.
Yeah.
Concerns about individual staff members or students.
I want to be careful in how you word it, because like, a parent can come in and mention their own child.
Yeah.
If they want.
That
And
is
we
very
allow
right.
people to name staff members when they're doing it positively.
we talked about
But we
that,
say
yeah.
concerns here.
Yeah. And it's already said that
Mentions.
you can't address complaints or grievances involving individual staff members.
Individual students, staff members then?
Yeah. Yeah,
I think there's
that's probably the way to
something
do it.
to, there needs to be something, it's happened.
Yeah.
We want to ensure that it is spelled out, that is a no-go, that is a comment ender.
And there's a formal process that, again, like the public spaces, that's not where that happens.
So the change I have is for 5A to add students as well, staff.
Yep, and Joe I saw it live on our.
Yeah,
Are you saying students other than their own, or are we just saying students?
since we're saying complaints or grievances, I don't think a parent's gonna come in with a complaint about their own child. I save those for home.
Concerns about.
Thanks again, Joe. This is hugely wonderful to work from.
And this is like an nitpicky thing, but when we have like a public comment forum, these are the things that they're supposed to do. We have them initial at the end of it.
That's, okay, so that was kind of, yeah.
Nobody ever reads it, and I want to know that they have, I like to get there
That's
to the
a
end.
great idea. So there's a couple follow-ups. So Joe, if you want to just rework and kind of refinalize, we can consider this potentially a first read, or would we still need a first read of what we've agreed is a first read?
I mean, if we're agreeing that we're just going to make that one, or you're just going to make that one change to 5A, or if not in 5A to limit speaking on students, then this could be the first read too.
Did we also want something to put in to address John's point about any individual
being able
board
to
member can?
I think, so what I would say to that is, if it's not spelled out in the policy, then we do need to put effort into like a board handbook that spells out the general practice of like, when a public comment is happening and you find something objectionable, this is how you raise it. With the presiding officer.
And
like, and so that's like, not maybe in policy, but in practice then for future board members, like this is the appropriate way to do this.
And I'm totally fine either way. It actually is like a part of Robert's rules that like, that's part of how you're supposed to, function in board meetings, is at any point, if anything is procedurally objectionable, any one of us can point that out. But I think it's valuable to have it spelled out. And I think it's also valuable, like John said, to have a board handbook. That we all follow that shows us how to be board members.
I saw Robert's rules on a bookshelf once. This like thick, and I was like, yeah, no. Well, I can go to law school.
Robert was not someone I would have been friends with.
I mean, I'm leaning just because one, we don't have a handbook right now.
Yeah.
And two, the sooner this is live and, really put into practice, I do kind of like the idea of then adjusting the language to just make it known to people that you can object or you can object. And the president would be the one to officially, whatever, but.
Could be modified to say at the discretion of the board president or presiding officer, or by notification, of the.
From another board member.
Yeah.
I think we still want to leave it that one person decide, like the person who's running the meeting, like you said, decides. I'll just add a sentence. I'll think about how and I'll circulate it probably tomorrow and everyone can, yes.
What if that sentence was just to add under number 6, just to add like under the, will not respond to questions or otherwise engage in dialogue with commenters during the public comment period, except for to raise an objection with the presiding officer if they find a comment objectionable or whatever it is, however you want to phrase that. If you just slip that sentence right in there.
Yeah.
I think we're done.
That's a good, I agree with John. That's probably where it should be.
So can we just do a first read that includes those 2 changes, Nate?
Yes.
Done.
Change to 6 and then change to 5.
Yep. First read.
And then the form.
I'm doing it right now in real time. And
We'll
yeah.
make sure that the students' part transfers to that.
Thank you. Where was that?
Are we gonna suggest some changes here?
Please, and did I give you commenting rights? I don't remember where you accessed. This is like rough draft, but I just tried to take initial thoughts from Joe and just rework what the form would look like in person. One big one that I wanted to see is the check box at the top of like, why do you have the right to speak at our meeting?
Yeah. Except I would change parent or guardian to align with the district language that we use, caregiver, care holder, or
Thank you.
whatever we currently use. And I'm not sure what the first guideline.
Yeah, I would say, I would take that one out and just have the.
Yeah, that was old, or that was in the original draft that I got from Lori. So I left it there because I didn't really know what it meant.
This is a public record. Like,
Is that what
Well,
it's
let's
supposed
say that the meeting belongs to the board, it doesn't belong to the public. I don't know, but I don't think it's necessary. I would take out 1 and just these are the guidelines for the comments. Like, this is how you comment. These are more like how-tos as opposed to theoreticals.
So I need some guidance on my thought here, maybe, in regards to political ideology. Can we limit that? No.
We can't limit
Limit what?
Political ideology, like extreme
Oh.
political ideology or
No.
Right.
anything racist or, the isms or anything that goes against our frameworks or foundations.
I think to the extent that some of that might be like abusive or like, then it's incumbent on us to kind of, like, your ideology might entirely be threatening. Like we can raise that, and it's appropriate to do that, but not on the grounds of being political. I have some political beliefs that are offensive. Sure. I'm sure we all do.
Yeah, I think everything, just if we add the students.
Yep, I just did that.
And get rid of the first
Yep.
one and then add, I think it's great. I think you guys did a great job. Thank you for doing this.
I'll still leave this to linger, right? Just as Joe will do some working so we can revisit both of these one more time. I think one more logistical thing then that I wanted to then surface because of how we've just discussed the public comment piece. So on our website, the Board of Education website, there's a place that talks about public comment. So then obviously we'll get all of this updated and married together of what changes we're talking about with policy. So it reflects on the website. But there is a place to submit a written comment. So I want to make sure that we have our website reflect the fact that this portal can send a message the board will receive and read as it would if you emailed VASD board, but this is not a platform to have a public comment read at a board meeting.
So it won't be read.
Won't be read going forward.
But that's like, yeah,
Like that adjusted, once the final policy is put in place,
Right.
it's like that adjusted to be a communication of how to use the VSD or email.
Oh, that would maybe, so we just avoid this kind
And
of portal
with the
thing
policy,
altogether.
the new policy is created in this space here.
I mean,
Well, the new policy splits out like 3 separate things. There's oral public comments, there's written public comments that are not read but get printed out into the board
And posted on
materials
board
and
docs.
posted on board docs. And then there's board emails that get handled as they get handled now, and sent to the whole board that are not a matter of the public meeting unless they're requested for the open records request or something.
So what do we
I
want
don't
on the
know if I have
website?
strong feelings about what you're saying, but I can see a purpose for each of the 3 things.
If there's the portal, could the portal just pull up the electronic version of this? So people are very aware that they are submitting a written public comment that'll, sometimes people think they're submitting an email and it's not intended to be broadcast to the entire district. So this would be like something that would make it very clear this is being put into the record, because I think people do. Yeah.
Well, I think both on the paper copy here and the electric copy that we're talking about being based on that number 1 should be rewritten to say, this will be entered into the public record. Please be aware that whatever you write on this or whatever you plan on saying is going to be recorded or kept and open to the public. Like, as your warning, this is not just an email, this is the public record. And it's both like, at the top of that thing and at the top of the online form.
Yeah. Jen, do you want to capture your email on this?
What?
An email address on this?
Thank you. So I guess that was kind of the question I had for all of you, like, what do we want on that website that says public comment?
I think it should be something like what John, if we're keeping the policy how I have it in here, which is that there is this category of things called written public comment that don't get read aloud but do get included in the board packet, then I think we should make sure that portal clearly says, you are submitting a written public comment. This will not be read aloud at board meeting, but it will be included in publicly noticed board materials, kept for all
And I
time.
think there also could be then to communicate, with the board, I can't think of any words. Like the alternative versus the board email.
If you don't want to do this.
If you do not want this to be part of the
just
public
send an
record.
I would hate to be in a position, I don't know if this even applies, Nate, of like, if somebody goes to submit a written comment and then gets all angry that it's not necessarily anonymous.
So we just have to highlight that this, your information will be shared. Again, this is public comment. Bold that. That it's on you. Can only share so much information.
Can I ask a clarifying question on something that was mentioned while I was trying to do something else? Where parent and guardian, I think someone suggested using care holder instead, but isn't care holder, doesn't that mean something else? Isn't that broader?
And that's what I don't know, what are because I was even debating, like, do we have to have city, state, and zip code? I mean, maybe city, but like, who are we talking about that can come and speak even on behalf of a student? Are they gonna live out of state?
I think we should have the form match what's in the policy in terms of who's allowed to make comments. So if we change it one place, we should change it.
Right, and that's why I used the language I had originally on the form, because that was what you had in the policy, because I just copied it and pasted.
And I thought that when we use care holder, it basically encompasses all of the categories. But we want to be specific because
About,
we're
like legal
limited.
guardianship is really what we're talking about, or is there?
The person in power school. Like, which is, it could be the legal guardian.
I mean, can someone,
Who are we trying to capture that wouldn't be considered a parent or guardian?
like another
I think there's
relative?
plenty of situations where people live informally with a relative as their guardian. That's why it's lowercase g guardian. Not a separate.
Right.
Or somebody.
So they'd be
What?
a resident of the district that they'd be able to.
Maybe, maybe not. So culturally, I mean, my parents could live on the east side, guardians for whatever reason.
And we could have an open enrolled student who doesn't live with a parent, but lives with an aunt. And that aunt doesn't have legal guardianship.
But has been signed over like authority in power school.
Yeah, so I guess that's who we would be trying to get with guardian.
Or on the flip side, who are we restricting or wanting to limit to be able to speak if they're not any of the other things?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I guess that's the question I have, right? If there are any of the other things.
I think who I would want to restrict is that same aunt if the kid doesn't live with them. You know what I mean, right? Like, someone's grandparent shouldn't get to come if they don't live in the district.
Is there anything we need to vote on before these guys go? Oh, no, we still have a
Oh, yeah, we have closed session, there's no other votes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure.
Thank you. See you guys.
See ya.
Okay, I think are we good on?
I think so. So what did we decide about the parent, guardian, caregiver, legal, power school representative?
Who else do you want on there? Like,
I think in this category, parent or guardian, lowercase g guardian is sufficient because
Okay.
it sounds like someone could be the power school authority without getting a court order giving them guardianship.
Okay.
What if we said legal representative? And power school is like a form of legal representation, is it not?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Nate's getting tired of my questions.
Listen, I just lost 2 more.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Do we want students to be able to hire an attorney to speak on their
Right.
behalf?
What was that?
Then you could have an attorney speak on their behalf if you did it that way.
We don't need attorneys speaking anymore.
Mhm.
The attorneys are the second ones we don't need speaking anymore.
Fair.
This is super helpful.
Okay.
So we'll pass it all of it one more time and then make sure that our website under public comment reflects what it is we want it to reflect really
That's
clearly.
great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
I think we
Thank
need
you,
a
Nate.
picture of Jen's face on this form on the internet. Can we vote on it now?
You will send it to me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then as we prepare to adjourn the closed session, just want to offer a little bit more preface as we shift into that space. Before we consider a motion to enter closed session, I want to provide a brief explanation as required by Wisconsin's open meetings law for this type of closed session. The board will be reviewing the district's current position under an existing real estate purchase option agreement. Aspects of this discussion relate to the district's future land use planning and contract positioning. Public discussion could affect how counterparties or others respond to our actions. So we believe confidently that this closed session is warranted under Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E. Before proceeding, are there any other general comments from any other board members related to long-term land planning conversations? Okay, so then no further discussion. I'll entertain a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E to deliberate the district's position under an option to purchase agreement involving the potential acquisition of real estate where competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And will remain in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the government body who is rendering advice concerning a strategy to be adopted by the board in which litigation is likely to be involved, specifically litigation regarding an alleged breach of contract. And finally, will remain in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C to consider the employment performance of a public employee, specifically to consider the employment of an hourly staff member. Is there a motion to adjourn to closed session? Ooh, is there a second? We'll go through roll call vote. Joe?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Meredith? Aye. I am aye as well. We are adjourned to closed session.